Take a look at the second set of study questions on the Bhagavad-Gita, reading 18. Number one, at the start of teaching 3, Arjuna objects that Krishna has contradicted himself. What is this supposed contradiction? Let's take a look at the text. Arjuna says to Krishna, "But Krishna, if you consider knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of ultimate reality, knowledge of God, superior to any sort of action, why are you telling me to do these terrible deeds? Your statements seem to contradict each other. They confuse my mind." What I take the contradiction to be is that Krishna has said that action is inferior to knowledge, to non-action. That actions lead us astray. Actions can lead us from what we should be concentrating on, which is Brahman, which is Krishna, which is reality, which is truth, and that's what's important. So if that's what's important, why are you telling me to do something, to go out there and act and to kill and fight in battle? These statements seem to contradict each other. I think that is the substance of the claim on the part of Arjuna that he has contradicted himself. And then this leads into question 2. Krishna's response to Arjuna's objection is that he must perform every action sacramentally. What does this mean? That's a difficult question. I think these are all difficult questions, actually. But what I take him to mean is that you must act without worrying about the results of your action. You must act and completely relinquish any interest in the fruits or the outcomes of your action. Don't act in order to get somewhere or receive some reward. Just act. And to say that this means to perform the action sacramentally, a sacrament is, as I understand it in religion, what connects you up with the divine, with God. So there are sacraments like marriage, the sacrament in the Catholic Church of the communion. Every action should be an act of devotion to God, kind of a sacrifice to God. So again, this idea that we don't act to get something out of our actions. We just act, and we regard that action as a kind of a sacrifice. I do this for you, Krishna, rather than I do this to get something out of it. So I think this ties in with the subject of number 1, obviously, since it's a response to it, that there's no contradiction in saying that although action is inferior to knowledge and non-action, you still have to act. You still have to live. You still have to take care of your body, provide for yourself and your family, and if you're a soldier, you have to fight in a war. But the trick is to do those things without getting caught up in the results, in the outcomes, in the purposes, the goals, the fruits of the action, to do it for its own sake. And he suggests, well, think of it as if you're making a sacrifice to me. Think of your action as being an act of religious devotion, so that it's an offering to God rather than something that I do to get a specific outcome. At least that's the best that I can make out of it. Number 3, according to Krishna on page 54, what is the reward of all action? That's a good question. I haven't looked at page 54 lately. Let's see. Okay. Reward of all action. Well, I'm proud of that question now. Here it is. The reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment. So I was right. You never know. Yeah, I stand by this question now. Yeah, it's a good question because, the reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment. Right? That is because the reward of everything, the only reward is enlightenment, because all that matters is enlightenment, the gaining of truth. I'm not even going to go into, the idea of breaking the cycle of birth and death and reincarnation, because I don't know enough about Hinduism. But that is the suggestion that your goal should be truth. That's what breaks that cycle, and that's just what's important, is knowing reality. And it's actually quite familiar. I don't really think it matters from what religious tradition you're from. What's important is knowing God. Certainly, that's what I take to be the fundamental standpoint of Christianity. Just as an example, the fundamental important thing is to know God. Everything else is of merely secondary importance. It's not that there aren't other things that are important, but nothing is on the same level as that. So yeah, the reward of all action is to be found in enlightenment, not in winning the battle, not in becoming the hero, not in that's all. In comparison with enlightenment, which is basically knowing reality and therefore knowing God, all those things pale in comparison. So yes, the reward of all action is enlightenment. So yeah, do you think that this reward can and should be the goal of human life? Why or why not? Well, that's a difficult question. Can we reach enlightenment? I don't know. And then even if we can, should that be the goal of human life? Is that the most important thing? Is it more important than love? Is it more important than earthly satisfactions? Certainly the text is telling us that. And certainly that's, I would say, the substance of Krishna's message to Arjuna, but I don't know if we agree with it. It's a very, very challenging thing.